Hey everybody, Derek here with another episode of Risky Business. I'm here really excited to introduce you to Draython Savoi. Draython is a Cornell graduate, longtime veteran in cybersecurity, 30 plus years of experience in technology and the security of that technology. And we are bringing Draython in here today to talk about what he and his team at CybrHawk are working on. You know, there's a good side and a bad side to everything, right? So uh, lately, everyone is talking about AI, namely ChatGPT. They're launching new versions all the time. They're improving on this. Elon Musk and a couple of his cohorts came out and said, hey, we need to slow this down for 6 months. You can't stop progress, even if you're the most progressive person out there, which Elon's got some great ideas and he's got some terrible ideas and he seems to push forward with everything. But, you know, one thing it seems absolutely imminent, and that is that AI is here to stay and it's only going to get bigger. So we're excited to talk to Draython because Draython and his company are on the good side of AI, using those tools, using that technology as a resource to basically fight back against cybercrime. So without further ado, Draython, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Derek. Pleasure to be here.
So Draython, I want most of this time to be spent with you telling us about what is happening at CybrHawk and what you guys are doing with AI and how you're integrating that and how that relates to a small business owner using that to protect them against business theft.
Thank you, Derek. We at CyberHawk believe in developing products and services that can really reduce the probability of cyber events at an organization, whether it's a small organization, whether it's an enterprise organization. We just announced the OpenAI integration into our CyberHawk XDR SIM and our NDR platform. What does that mean? XDR means that we can ingest data from any source that has syslogs that we could use to identify threats. And the NDR portion of course, being the ability to look at those lateral movements inside of a network. That gives unprecedented visibility into a network to understand what adversaries might be doing or trying to do inside an environment. That has a lot of implications in terms of the different areas of cybersecurity too, in terms of helping people to identify, to detect, respond, and recover from incidences should they occur.
So if I've got a small insurance agency with 5 people in the office, or say a plumbing company with 10 trucks on the road and 3 people in the office, you know, I've got antivirus. I've got Kaspersky or Webroot or one of the big names, one of the good antiviruses. What is it that I need XDR for and SIEM? You know, why does AI need to be standing at the gates to protect my business?
That's an excellent question. So the traditional way, we've always thrown more and more things at cybersecurity. But when we look at why do we need these other things, there are different attack vectors, and XDR gives you that ability to see that. People, you do still need antivirus. You still need a firewall. You still need those basics in cybersecurity. But as adversaries become more advanced, you need more tools. XDR gives you that heads up and puts you ahead of or keeps you at par with the adversaries so that you can keep track of them and be able to track what they're doing. The AI portion of it allows us to react faster. There are so many different avenues in which an attacker can hit that having a single human being, and most of the time the defender community is using a single individual to do that. So as a result, we are trying to constantly keep up and play catch up. By deploying AI, it evens the playing field so that as soon as the adversary hits, we're able to identify that adversary and take quick action to stop them and remediate this situation.
So one of the things I always try to relate to business owners is when you're dealing with the subject of cybersecurity, you need to look at this as a protection for your business from being stolen out from under you, right? So I always say our businesses are built on lists, your list of customers, your list of vendors, what have you. That's where you make your money from.
Mhm.
Right? You're marketing to those people, you're remarketing to those people, selling them new products and services. So as soon as that list is removed from your business And now you have to start notifying those people that their data has been stolen. That list stops making you money. It starts costing you money. Now you're having to start notifying those people. Um, and now someone else is making money off of your business list. So that's literally your business getting stolen from you. That's business theft. It's not your business anymore because you're not the one making money off of it. You're now losing money, right?
Right.
So we always talk about those layers of security that you need
Mm-hmm.
and the layers of risk management that you need on top of your security. And the biggest one is, cyber liability insurance. A lot of business owners will go out and they'll buy the cyber liability insurance, but there's some things that fall short with liability insurance, and that is when you start making claims, the odds of them renewing you get lower. The
Right.
odds of them dropping your coverage get higher. And 90% of these claims that are being made on cyber liability policies, 90% of them are getting rejected.
That's right.
So, having this multi-layer approach and making sure that, once a bad guy gets through that first door, there's another door. Now he's got to work on that. He gets through that door, there's another door. So this XDR, EDR, MDR, SIM, all these things that are in this package that are on the higher end of the cybersecurity scale.
Right.
A lot of small business owners view those as more complex than what they need, more complex than what they can manage. But really, this is becoming a necessary part of any cybersecurity model. And along with all those parts that are coming in, you really need help managing it. So what I love about the CybrHawk tools is that they're scaled down from an enterprise level where they can be offered to a small business, and that's what we always look for. Not everybody can afford the same kind of cybersecurity that Uber or Domino's Pizza. These big corporations have all this great stuff, but one of the things I love about, and everybody we bring on this podcast are geared towards those small businesses and protecting them. So and I appreciate you actually paying attention to that market because not everybody does. But so explain a little bit about how the AI helps to offset the cybercrime side of things. Like, how are you guys using the AI to make your tools perform better?
Oh, thank you. So the in the defender community, the one thing we suffer a lot from, which is also a challenge in helping to recruit people, the average burnout for a analyst is about 2 years, and that's if you get a good one that can sit there. Think about what an analyst is doing when they're watching the platform and monitoring all these different environments. They've got one or multiple screens they're looking at, looking for threats. And then the system is feeding them all this data and saying, hey, is this a threat? Is this a threat? Is this a threat? And the analyst has to sit there and analyze that and determine whether that's really a real threat or if it's a false positive. So the amount of time, and then once they start investigating, that investigation can take anywhere from 5 to 15, sometimes 20 minutes just to investigate one thing that they suspect might be a threat. And a lot of times they're not. So that's a huge amount of energy and time that's spent just trying to keep track of where is the adversary really and which one is a real adversary. AI can take that from that 15 to 20 minutes and drop that down to 1 to 2 minutes and really determine if something is more of a threat and lessen the false positives. So we're hoping with the AI we can reduce the tier one analyst burnout, which is a real problem in the industry. And that's why we see just such a high turnover in this field when you work in a SOC. It's grueling if you think about it. You make one mistake or miss one thing because you've been sitting watching that screen for a year and didn't see anything. And then something goes by your screen that you missed because you're just watching that screen over and over again. So the human error part is still there. And then customers get upset when someone misses that, but they don't understand the back end part of the system where the humans are trying to look at all this data, even though the SIM has some intelligence to it. And it is firing alerts, but it's firing a lot of alerts because it's better safe than sorry. AI will help us to identify real threats so that analysts can spend their time working on real solutions to real problems in terms of cybersecurity. So that is the true benefit of AI. We still think we need humans involved. We do need humans involved because adversaries are always changing their tactics. So our AI will start to help reduce that alert fatigue so the analysts can focus on real threats.
Yeah. So just for the layman context, when you're a SOC analyst, that's a security operations center.
Mhm.
And when you're an analyst sitting in front of that computer, you are a security specialist and a technical guru in just about every case I've ever met. Those guys are some extremely intelligent people
Mhm.
that are using some extremely powerful tools. But if you can imagine sitting at a desk and watching somebody go back and forth through a gate all day, thousands and thousands of transactions. And like, just imagine watching a closed circuit TV monitor with just the same gate and the same people walking in and out, right? And they all look alike. That's the kind of fatigue that Draython's talking about. You're just staring at a screen, you get kind of tunnel vision after a while. And one of the big debating factors of the AI, the future of AI, is jobs that are getting eliminated, right? So Draython and CybrHawk are sitting in this position where they can take AI and leverage that to have less human interaction rather with the system. But it's not necessarily eliminating any jobs.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
reason
yeah.
is we have a 10-year experience gap. We were just talking about this in one of our recent episodes, but we have a 10-year experience gap where we've got guys and gals that are experienced in cyber security, but the new people that are graduating are just now seeing this industry coming out. So we've got a major shortage, right? We've got a 10-year experience gap where we've had really nobody graduating with cybersecurity degrees. We've got fresh people with fresh degrees with no experience, right? So we need some time. We're going to need some tools for those new graduates to catch up and really get into a good spot. And AI is actually going to help us in the cybersecurity industry to kind of close that gap a little bit.
It's, certainly well. One other thing to remember while you're on this subject is that you have to realize that the industry is changing so fast that it's getting to the point where it's humanly almost impossible to keep up. So whatever those new people that are coming to the field learned in school, by the time they get in the field, that's old news. And adversaries have changed their tactics to something new. We already know that ransomware is actually on the decline. It's still a lot of it out there. You can't ignore it. But it's on the decline because adversaries are starting to switch their focus. And we see that shift in the defender community. And we're already starting to change our toolings to address that. But the guys in school are learning about how to stop ransomware. By the time they graduate, we don't know where ransomware is going to be.
We'll talk about the other tactics they're using. If they're shifting away from ransomware, what have you seen that what are you adjusting for?
They're moving straight towards extortion. They're going to doxing, where they're just taking your information, putting it out there, and just basically they know adversaries spend a lot of time learning about you. I think I heard an ad once that said the adversary knows more about you than you do. They spend months in your system learning about everything about you. One of the cases we had before where there was an individual who got sick, went to the hospital, and posted something on Facebook, and then an adversary sent an email to the accounting department and say, "Hey, I'm about to go into surgery. Can you send this check?" And the check got sent because that was real time information. So those are the sort of tactics we're starting to see where they're hacking into people's personal information. They're sitting there and they're very patient, and they're taking the time to learn about us so that they know how to respond. And this is where ChatGPT becomes somewhat dangerous in that the English is now perfect. So the old days of having being able to read an email and tell that it wasn't from someone possibly in America or from another country, you can now create perfect English or perfect other languages to communicate to anyone. And now you can't use that as one of the things you look at, looking at the URL, looking at the English. It says hi friend, or a prince or things like that. So those things have been corrected with something like ChatGPT, in addition to having the ability to write malware. But it changes the landscape. One thing you have to remember about hackers, and the good guys are the white hackers, the bad guys, the black hackers. They use the same tools. They are identical. There's no difference between the tools that are used. It's just one is used for good, the other is used for evil. So it's a constant game of one in front of the other. They find a way in, we find a way to stop them. They find a way in, we find a way to stop them. Look what happens with vulnerabilities. If you pay attention to even the government that puts out a list of vulnerabilities, there are new vulnerabilities every week. We talk about the term 0 days, which means it's a new type of attack that hasn't been seen before. Well, 5 years ago, those they would come out once a year, twice a year. You know, uh, now they're coming out all the time. There's a new attack vector almost every day. It's very difficult to keep, even for us that are studying this stuff every day, it's difficult for us to keep up. This is where AI will have an advantage, the ability to identify those 0 days and react immediately. Now, at CybrHawk, we've been very rapid at responding to 0 days. If you look at the log4j, we were the first, and I challenge anyone to say otherwise. We were the first to start detecting it once it was publicly announced within 1 hour. So that's rapid. But within 24 hours, adversaries have started exploiting that vulnerability, and a lot of systems are compromised off of that one vulnerability. So AI is needed to rapidly respond to 0 days as they come out. I'm not talking about within hours because remember, adversaries are going to start using AI too. They already are. Adversaries are using AI too. So we have to fight AI with AI in order just to keep up and hopefully stay ahead.
Yeah, we've gone from this segmented phase, technology is growing in phases to where there is no, there is no, there's this era, then there's a new era, then there's a new era. It's just a constant new, it's not, Heartbleed happened however many years ago, right? And
Yes.
it made the front page news. There's way bigger vulnerabilities that are out now that happen weekly that are bigger than Heartbleed, but they don't make the news anymore because it's just old news, right?
Right. Right.
And you know, one of the most frustrating things is businesses don't know, but business leaders don't know when the guy next door gets hacked.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that they really talk about. It's not something that's discussed out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody talked more publicly about being a victim of data theft or a data breach, everybody would be going out and protecting themselves. Everybody would be going out and getting insurance. Everybody would be going out and thinking about all these things. But it's almost like cancer in the '60s. If somebody had cancer, nobody wanted to talk about it. It was a
Right.
was it was a dirty word, right? You didn't want to talk about it. In the business community, it's still that way. But you were talking about how an adversary will spend months on a system, um, doing research on the company, waiting in your email inbox, watching communications going in and out, looking at your social media. And one of the most astounding statistics that I've seen is that it takes 120 to 240 days to detect a data breach. That's such an exorbitant amount of time for somebody to learn everything there is about you.
Yes.
And it gets in it, like you said, it goes deeper than just who your customers are or who your vendors are. They know who you are. They want to know where your kids are going to school, when you're in the hospital, what kind of surgery you're having. And you know businesses who this has happened to before, something like the social engineering where hey, I'm about to go into surgery and send this payment out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best policies I've heard was outside of cybersecurity, but from a policy standpoint, was don't send money anywhere without us being eye to eye. Like, don't even accept a phone call where it sounds like my voice, because these things can be so easily simulated now. And a bad connection on a cell phone could be interpreted as the CEO telling the CFO to transfer money somewhere for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, there's policies, there's ways that we need to manage our lives, understanding the surrounding environment, and understanding that there's a lot of people trying to get their hands in our pockets, and they're on Adderall and all sorts of illicit drugs, and they can stay up all night, and they're working just as hard as you are to steal your money as you are working to earn that money, right?
That's right.
So what do you see in the future for AI globally? So I understand how you're using it and helping it to do something for good, but where do you see all of this going? jobs wise, economy wise, socially?
I think we're going to see the tier one analysts being reallocated to other higher tasks. I don't think we'll be able to get rid of the people in the industry, but I think we'll be able to retask them. Uh, AI will start to expand even greater. We're even working on our next version of AI, which we hope to expand and release this year. And I want to talk about AI in itself. So the only kind of real AI is ChatGPT. Everyone else is using it as a marketing term. So people will generate automations and call it AI. That's not real AI. AI should be able to make a decision and inform without input from a human. That is real AI. And that's what we're developing too. So in the cybersecurity space, if something happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, and an analyst happens to miss it because they're tired, we want that AI to say, I found this, I took this action, you can correct it if you want to, but based on what I understand about this particular adversary, this is a real threat. And I was able to check those things. What can AI do? You happen to have an executive who is in California on a conference, and he logs in from California. And he forgot to tell the IT people or the cybersecurity team that he was traveling there. But AI could actually look at his records and go, I see a plane ticket and I see also rented a car in California. So therefore, I'm not going to flag this. Versus completely cutting him off from the system and he can't do his job while he's out there. Maybe he's giving a big presentation on the company, but he forgot to tell everybody who's going there. So that's called an impossible traveler when you see someone here and logging in at the same time from another location. So those sort of things AI can make those intelligent decisions about that it would take us what that 15, 20 minutes. You got to call someone on the phone. Hey, I see that the exec has logged in from California. Is he there? I don't know. Let me go call his assistant. Oh, his assistant is asleep. I can't get up in the middle of the night. We have to wait until the morning. Let me see if I can check the logs. Oh yeah, I do see a ticket here. By the time all that happens, either something bad will have happened or it was something you wasted time on that you could have spent on something else. So I think the growth of AI is a good thing, but again, we always have to be worried that bad guys are going to use it too. Hopefully, we, like other people that are developing AI, are going to put safeguards on it to prevent the bad guys from using it for bad things, and we can use it to help defend against, as opposed to creating problems for customers. And I think the small businesses are going to get hit the hardest, unfortunately. That's why I'm passionate about small businesses and nonprofits taking this very seriously because AI is going to change cybersecurity. Just like ransomware when it hit started changing and grew and grew and grew. And even to this day, there are still people who don't take cybersecurity seriously. And they actually don't have the things in place to protect themselves against even ransomware. With AI about to hit the place, and we know that adversaries are going to develop AI. If they can't get it from us, they're going to develop it on their own. They're attending the NVIDIA conferences and all the other conferences around AI just like we are. But they're trying to figure out how to use it to attack people, whereas we're attending the conferences to determine how to defend people. So if you don't have good cybersecurity hygiene, even as a small business, it's going to have a devastating impact on you starting this year. And we will only see this start to grow in future years. But it's going to be a rapid impact. And if you look at what's happening with technology, how long did it take for ransomware to climb and take off? A number of years. How long is it going to take AI to start having an impact? I believe it's going to be under 12 months. So we've got to somehow get small businesses to really take this very seriously and start looking at investing in measures to decrease the probability of a cybersecurity incident. Now, I know small businesses don't have large budgets. So the defender community needs to come up with solutions that can make it affordable for small businesses to be able to defend themselves. And that's one thing we're working on at CybrHawk too, is to give them that upper hand without breaking the bank so they can have real cybersecurity to protect themselves against cyber threats out there.
That's why I love your mission. I love your message that small business who can't afford to spend $1 million a year on cybersecurity, that's what makes them a target, because cyber criminals know just as well as we do that these small businesses don't have the firewalls and the DNS filtering and the AI protection. They don't have any of that stuff, so they're easy targets. So maybe if you hack Joe's Plumbing, you're going to make $3,000 or $4,000 selling their information on the dark web or extorting them or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's not a huge payday, but if you do a couple of those a week, you're doing all right. And there's lots of Joe's Plumbing companies out there, right? And none of them have the proper measures in place. So it's just a matter of time before all these businesses experience some sort of catastrophic data breach or a cyber attack. So, in the context of everything that we're talking about, what kind of advice would you give to a small business owner? Like I talked about in the beginning, got 5 or maybe 10 employees,
Mhm.
don't have a huge budget, you can't afford to hire a full-time IT staff. I mean, what advice do you give to those people listening to this podcast going, I don't even, I'm a plumber. I don't know how to go out and buy CybrHawk AI and install it at my business to protect myself. What is it those people should be doing?
The easiest thing to do, because it's not their business, the plumber isn't going to be as good at IT and cybersecurity as an IT and cybersecurity professional. It makes sense to find a company that has that expertise that can work with you within your budget to bring that expertise in house to your organization. And there are lots of MSPs, MSSPs, IT and cybersecurity companies out there that can do that. It's also to remember. It's also important to remember that you have to either purchase IT or purchase cybersecurity, or both in most cases, in all cases, and understand that they are not the same. So when you're talking about IT services, those are going to be different than cybersecurity services, and that's going to be critical for people to educate themselves on so they understand what they're getting. Because a lot of the cybersecurity stuff you don't see, it's all done behind the scenes and under the hood and things like that. But you're the professional you're working with should be able to generate reports on, one, how you're continuing to increase your cybersecurity maturity, or two, how it's lessening your chance of being breached. So that's how you kind of work with professionals that are dealing with you in cybersecurity. But always talk to your IT professional who usually has some connections with some sort of cybersecurity professional, or has cybersecurity tools in their tool belt that can assist an organization, particularly a small business, in becoming more mature. It's more important to do something than to do nothing. If you don't have the budget to pay $1,000 a month for cybersecurity, then be honest with your IT professional and say, I only have an additional $200 a month. What can you do for me with that? And that's not comfortable for a lot of business, because they think, oh, they want to make as much money as they can off me. They are a business. They do have to make money. They can't do it for free. But by telling them what your budget is, they can design a solution that helps you achieve some sort of security. So I'm a huge advocate of small businesses saying, look, I only have this much to spend. What can you do for me? Maybe next year we can continue to increase that. And if you look at when you deploy cybersecurity solutions, we never can do it everything in a year. If you look at all the different areas of cybersecurity, it's impossible for a small business to afford them, but there's certain things they can do that have a high return on investment. And your IT professionals can make sure you got your backups working. Backups are critical to protect you against ransomware. Matter of fact, when adversaries hit your systems, they want to look for your backups so they can destroy them, because otherwise you're not going to pay them. So you want to make sure you have backups. You want to make sure that you've got, working with an IT professional, make sure you got multi-factor authentication deployed through every system that you have. Not just your Office 365, just not your Google Work Drive, not just those systems, but what about your financial systems, your HR systems? If you're a nonprofit, what about your donor base? And I tell you, most nonprofits I work with do not have their donor bases protected. And inside that donor base, they usually have to send them a tax letter, which has their social security number or their tax ID, their information, and that becomes valuable to a hacker. So there are simple things you can do with your IT professional that can give you cybersecurity services, because most small business can't afford to separate IT and cybersecurity. So it's more cost effective for them to go with an MSP that they can get both services through. And that's a cost effective way for small businesses to be able to afford cybersecurity.
Yeah, and after 13 some odd years in information technology and cybersecurity, I can tell you from witnessed it firsthand.
Mhm.
The businesses and the business owners who, or the CFOs even, who say, "This is our budget. What can we do?" Or can we do a stepped plan? Can we implement things slowly so we're moving in the right direction? Those are the people who end up being the most secure because they're paying attention to this. Like somebody who just says, "Okay, let's wipe it out.
Mhm.
Let's not have this risk sitting on our table without managing it." Okay, it's $15,000 a month, because
Mhm.
they've got a high level of security necessary, a high level of compliance. They've got 50 employees or something like that. So they'll say, "No problem. Here's your 15 grand a month. Here's a 5-year contract. We don't care. Let's get it taken care of." A lot of times, those businesses suffer during the onboarding process because they're not
Right.
taking it seriously enough, and they're not as invested, right? So people put value on things when they pay for it. We've found that the businesses that understand the importance scrape a little bit of money together out of their budget. We do everything we can do for that amount of money, get them into a position where they're more secure than they were last month, and every month just try to chip away at the risk.
Mhm.
Those people with that long-term plan where that money that they're putting into their cybersecurity really means something. And when you send out security awareness training to their employees, they make sure that their teams are on top of it. When
Mhm.
you set up multi-factor authentication or password vaults or any kind of apps that these employees are going to need to use to make sure that they're maintaining the company's cybersecurity, the companies that have to take heed of their budget and invest in that see a lot more value in it, and they're a lot more disciplined, right? So
Yeah.
just because you don't have the big check to stroke and wipe it out doesn't mean that your business can't be as secure as those others, because like I said, that discipline factor comes in from those businesses who are disciplined. If you're disciplined about your budget, you're going to be disciplined about your cybersecurity too. So
That's what.
we've had some very successful relationships with people over the years that couldn't do everything all at once. They had to do it staged, or on a kind of a phased approach. So
Yeah, and I know one of the approaches that I've used that seems to work with a lot of business owners, small business owners, nonprofits, is talking to them about managing risk and reducing the risk. As a business owner, as a CEO, as a C-suite, their job is to obviously to bring in revenue to help the company or organization run, but also to reduce the risk so that the organization can continue to run. And think about this: if you ask the business, do they have insurance against fire? If they have insurance against theft, if they have insurance against all these other things, they're going to tell you yes. If they have insurance against the windows being broken. Now, how likely are any of these things to really occur? Very low.
and also what's your ROI on those investments? Like what's your return
Exactly.
on investment for fire insurance? Hopefully zero.
Right, right. Hmm. But the probability of you being hit by a cyber event is extremely high, particularly if you don't have a cybersecurity program that's continuing to mature over time. And that's a point that I try to stress. When you get started, you just don't put in that one thing and stop. You keep increasing your maturity over time, and you work with your professional, your technology professionals, to make a roadmap on how you're going to continue to improve your cybersecurity stance. And you stick to that roadmap because it benefits the organization in the long term. It also protects your employees. The one thing that people don't think about is if you are attacked, there's a high probability you'll be attacked a second time. And many times when they attack your employees' private information, employees leave. And in some cases, employees sue the employer. So owners don't think about these risks as a small business because they aren't in front of you. They are talked about risk, even though there's lots of information around to say, hey, protect, protect, protect. But as an owner or as a CEO or as one of the C suite, you have to, if you take it serious, the people that are working for you will too. As a small business, if you take it serious, then it'll help. It's one of the things that help keep you in business so that you continue to generate revenue. I can tell you this: if you look at what's happening with the federal government, I'm not getting into politics, but there are more and more requirements coming down for cybersecurity, and that's only going to increase. Look what happened in Europe. They take it very serious. and that's having huge impacts around the world. We are playing catch up, as you said. I envision, I've made several predictions, and most of them come true. So I'm predicting that within the next 24 months, every vendor that writes an RFP is going to have a question about that vendor's cybersecurity posture and have them prove that they have cybersecurity to protect the information. Because one of the things we're seeing is third party attacks. And these are coming through vendors that have access to the customers. So as a result of their contracts they're receiving from state, federal, local governments, and from healthcare and from financial services, those vendors are saying, if you're going to work with me and my clients, I need to know that you're secure too. So it's going to be pushed down to the small business. And if you don't have those things in place, there's going to be real cost to you in not getting business. However, if you do have those things in place, it will increase the chance of you winning additional business. So it's really important for small business to compete in the new markets that are going to be happening here in the next 24 months, that they have those cybersecurity things in place to continue to improve them. You're going to see questions before you have a contract that says, do you have these things in place? If you say yes and you are attacked, then you're talking about potential litigation. We have a very nice attorney who gave a presentation on that whole subject about not saying you have things in place and not being in place. You don't want to do that. You do want to make sure whether you win a contract or not, it helps protect your business today and your business tomorrow so that you can stay in business and not lose business. So there is a real importance for CEOs, for business owners, and for managers to really look at cybersecurity as the biggest threat that can end your company today, more so than a fire, more so than theft, more so than anything else. And it's something that we really need to be very upfront about and very direct about when we're talking to business owners, because they, at the end of the day, they want to know that they're doing things and there's an impact. The other important thing to do as professionals that are talking to lay people who don't understand the terminology is to give them information that shows that they're becoming more secure. There are all kinds of metrics we can use that allow us to do that. Those metrics justify what you are doing. And without providing those metrics, you're just talking in the wind. So if I tell you you are 50% more secure today because of A, B, C, and D, that has a huge impact on how the customer is viewing you and how they view their maturity in terms of increased cybersecurity. And if you're constantly year over year showing them going up that ladder for security, it has an impact on our organization. And for nonprofits, it has an impact on how the board views what the management team is doing. So there are multiple benefits to deploying a cybersecurity program, including reducing your insurance.
So you talked about several very important issues here. One is regulation. Regulations are coming down the pipeline, and one of the things that I've talked to quite a few business owners about, if you really want to thumb your nose at the big boys in your market, mm-hmm. One of the ways you can do it is by focusing on your cybersecurity, making sure that you remain relevant in your market. Don't let your reputation get damaged by a terrible reaction to a data breach, because you're going to lose trust, right? It's going to damage your reputation. The Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, mm-hmm. So the GLBA, so that them instituting these FTC safeguards. So this is what I see. Corporate America has a lot of influence in Washington, which happens to be where the FTC is based, right? So you've got companies that are large, tax companies that help you calculate your personal taxes or your business taxes, right? These companies have lobbyists that are pushing for regulations. They're pushing for these new rules and measures to go into place. And the federal government is completely justified in doing that because of the scourge of identity theft on our society, right? So they have good reasoning to do it. And they also have their corporate lobbyists coming in and pressuring them to put these stiffer and stiffer regulations in place. Because let's be honest, these big multi-billion-dollar corporations already have all these measures in place, mm-hmm. right? So the Intuits, the H&R Blocks of the world. They already have all those. I'm not saying that those are the guys, the lobbyists, but
Right.
those are the guys with the lobbyists, right? So when your Uncle Bill's CPA firm down the street, he's 5 years out from retirement, and he's got 8 people in his office working. It's almost impossible for him to look at those FTC safeguard rules. Number one, understand them,
Right.
and number two, do a DIY IT management program where he can build this up, put it together. But if he doesn't and he continues doing business, you're talking 5 years in prison, $100,000 fines just for being audited. Nothing bad even has to happen, right? So, there's a lot of things going on there that are pushing those regulations. FTC safeguards rule is great. Every one of our clients, even if we have a tire shop that we manage for, right? They put tires on cars and they are FTC safeguards compliant. It's not that difficult if you have the proper tools to manage something like that, or having a professional or an outsourced company that can come in and help you set all that up. What do you think is going to be happening here with on the regulatory side? We've got if you're regulated by the SEC, you've already got regulations in place. The FTC safeguards go into effect June 9th. You have to be compliant by June 9th. There's all sorts of requirements for the banking industry. So there's a lot of things that are already in place. One of the big ones this year is HIPAA. So the last update to HIPAA was the omnibus back in, I think it was 2013. So we've got 10 years since our last HIPAA rules update. And in that 10 years, the last 2.5 years has been the most tumultuous time in the history of identity theft and cybersecurity and cybercrime, right? So what other regulations and things are you looking out for? What industries do you think are going to be the most affected by regulations in the next couple of years?
We're starting to see a lot of states getting frustrated waiting on the federal government. So a lot of states are implementing their own. California is probably leading the way with some of their measures, and also New York with some of the things they've instituted. But those two are coming up with some very strong cybersecurity requirements for business that are really changing those industries, and people that want to do business with those markets are having to adhere to those cybersecurity policies. To the point that the federal government is starting to look at those specific laws and kind of tailor theirs against those. So there are a lot of laws that are pending in Congress in discussion in committee. What's going to come out, I don't know. If our Congress can really come together to focus on this, it's a real need, no matter what side of the fence you're on. We're hurting, and we need regulations to require these things so that we can catch up. As you said, we are years and years behind. We should have started on this 10, 15 years ago. I remember when we used to talk about cybersecurity 15 years ago, and people just used to basically ignore us and say, hey, we're not interested. Nowadays, they're like, okay, how do I do it? But I need more money to afford it. But everyone is very mindful of the fact that it is real. And there are requirements coming out from NIST in artificial intelligence cybersecurity. There's a recent mandate signed by the president for cybersecurity. We're going to see more and more of those regulations as time goes on. The bottom line is, small businesses are not going to be able to say, I can't afford it. They're not going to accept that as an excuse. So small businesses and mid-sized businesses are going to have to start talking to IT and cybersecurity professionals so they can really implement these things throughout their organization. So it is really necessary to make that happen. In terms of specific regulations that we're starting to see have an impact, healthcare for the longest time did not take cybersecurity seriously, and that's well known in the defender community. Matter of fact, I remember going to a conference in San Francisco about 10 years ago, and one person stood up and said, leave healthcare alone. They're not going to buy it. So even though they're the ones getting attacked over and over and over again, leave the hotels alone. They aren't going to buy it. And I don't have to mention any names, but if you Google hotels that have been attacked over and over again, there's one very big name that's been attacked, 7 to 10 times already in the last 2 years. It's like, when are you going to take this serious? You've been attacked over and over again, but you still don't want to invest in cybersecurity.
Well, there's title companies too. Like
Yeah.
some of these companies keep getting sued. They keep getting administrative charges against
Hmm.
them. Like,
Hmm.
and they just they're big enough where they're making enough money they can just pay for the fines and just keep moving on. But at some point, people are going to start paying attention
Yes.
and worrying about where they're taking their information. Right. So we had a title company a while back. Guy starting up a new title company, and he's got an underwriter through this very large underwriting company.
Hmm.
And we had a conversation with them, our assessment team, and we basically said, we can't take you on until we do an assessment. We need to get the lay of the land before you start everything up, how you're going to be handling everything from emails to data transfers and things like that. And we gave him an assessment and said, these are the things that you need to have in place if you're going to open a title company. And he says, well, I called corporate and I talked to the IT guy, and he said, all I really need is a good antivirus and use multi-factor authentication. And I said, who at corporate said what to you with what company? And he told me. I looked him up, and you Google the name of this company and cyber attack, and there are just pages of Google with data breaches, charges, administrative charges, which is like a criminal charge for a corporation, right? In New York, New Jersey, Texas, California. Like, this company's getting hit all the time. And I said, well, okay, well, that's why they're getting hit, because they don't have any security in place. But
Yeah.
eventually people are going to start doing a little bit more research. Identity theft ruins people's lives, right? So the number one resource for identity thieves is this stolen data. They're buying it off the dark web after it's stolen from a small business.
Hmm.
The federal government is looking at this. It's cost us billions and billions of dollars out of our national budget every year, from the federal budget to people's personal checking accounts and savings accounts. People are getting ripped off. So at some point, people are going to stop blindly trusting companies to manage their data. And when I say manage their data, I mean walking into a doctor's office and handing them your insurance card. They're managing your data. Like, once you hand that information over to them, they're managing it. So, it's the right thing to do for any business to make sure that their cybersecurity is in line, out of the interest of the people who are generating their business's revenue in the first place, right? So, um, it's a frustrating thing to kind of be. And I for 13 years, I've been telling my guys, like, hey, we're early to the dance, right? We're early to the dance. I know you go out, you talk to a customer, they don't really understand what you're saying. They think it's just something they don't need. We had an experience that was like that with a financial firm. And this company is, they have a very tight niche that they loan to, right? And and they're handling a big chunk of change. And they had a Middle Eastern person interested in investing in their company, right? So they had this thing scheduled where this guy was going to invest like $500 million into their fund, right? And these guys are all excited. They're coming into town, and we had talked to them about doing a risk assessment and implementing some cybersecurity measures prior. And they're telling us this story after it happened, but the guy sends his head of operations. I think it was like his CFO for his North American businesses, right? And he sends him down. He flies into the airport. They pick him up. They're going to meet. They're going to spend a couple hours at the office. They're all going to lunch. And then he's going to come back to the office for a couple hours and then fly out that afternoon. Guy comes in. He's in the office for like 45 minutes, asks them about cybersecurity policies. And there's an awkward look around the room. And he left. And when these guys called us back, it was, hey, we need to start getting the stuff in order, and maybe we can save this relationship. But I said, well, what happened? They said, well, we didn't even get to go to lunch with the guy. Like, he was out of here, because a Middle Eastern royalty who's going to throw around $500 million and put it into a fund somewhere where it's going to be getting loaned out and transferred from everywhere imaginable. They're not going to risk their money getting stolen from them. That financial firm, their insurance is not going to cover it. It's probably going to happen. There's probably somebody who's already targeting them. They've probably already been breached, and they're just waiting for that big chunk of change. So it's quite likely, and this person overseas knows, and his CFO over his North American companies knows that it's quite likely they're waiting for a big payday, because if these guys don't have any cybersecurity at all, somebody's probably already watching, right? So it's coming in line with what your third party attack was. I know you have a story too about the nonprofit you wanted to talk about with a third party attack, but it doesn't have to necessarily be an attack for this to hurt your business.
That's
It could
right.
just be a lost opportunity. So tell us about the. I do want you to tell us about the nonprofit you were talking about with the third party attack.
Yeah, as you were talking, it reminded me of a number of different things. And before I talk about the nonprofit, there's one that happened right here where a title company lost I'm sorry, the bank fired the title company because they didn't have any cybersecurity measures in place. So it's already happening, or we're seeing it on a regular basis, that people are losing contracts because they didn't take the time to put in cybersecurity measures. And in this case, it was just some basic things the person needed to do that they didn't do. And if they had just spent some time with an MSP or an MSSP or any sort of professional, they would have been able to cover some of these basic things to get them to the point where they wouldn't have lost that contract. Now, that's a huge impact on that small business, and it didn't have to be. But the bank didn't consider it worth their risk to continue to do business with this person because of that. So we actually have a number of cases. We have cases all the time, but one that stands in my head because it's one that I work um, quite closely with is a nonprofit that actually had an attack through a vendor. And that attack happened because they're a large enough organization where they could afford to separate IT and cybersecurity, and they did not. Now, if you think about the job of IT, the job of IT is to make sure things are working. The job of cybersecurity is to make sure things are secure. Sometimes that creates conflicts. And as a result, but you can have healthy discussions if there's mutual respect between the two and they're working together towards a common goal for the organization. And management understands the difference between them. We find that management doesn't usually understand the difference between IT and cybersecurity. Your IT professional will come in and put in your Office 365, set up your backups, install your antivirus. Um, a lot of those things you need that are part of cybersecurity, but that IT professional may not have the ability to do penetration testing, the ability to do exercises on cybersecurity, the ability to DFIR, which is the what happens when you actually have an incident that occurs. You need to get someone that can get into forensics and into incident response. So they have different focus areas and they don't overlap that much. So the company decided to have the IT person do everything, and the IT person got so busy with the organization that has several hundred people that they let the cybersecurity stuff slip, and they focused more on the IT stuff and less on the cybersecurity stuff. And then when a breach occurred and found it happened through a third party, then everyone was upset at the IT company because they weren't monitoring that. But their job wasn't necessarily to monitor. The IT company did try and tell them to buy some cybersecurity things, but they said, no, we don't have the budget for it. But they got upset at the IT vendor, even though the IT vendor made the recommendation to have a third party come in to do the cybersecurity, and they said no. And they ended up unfortunately losing a major contract, um, and they had to downsize the organization to half the size it was last year. So it can really and boards and the funny thing is the board had decided to approve the strategy based on the people that were on the board who were not cybersecurity professionals. So they had a board with no cybersecurity expertise. They had some IT expertise, but no cybersecurity expertise. And they were making decisions about cybersecurity without consulting true cybersecurity professionals about what needs to be done for the organization. So you really need to have that management involved and have a true understanding what the differences are between the systems. Um, before you can start to really deploy and make decisions about cybersecurity. Everyone thinks IT and cybersecurity are the same, and they're not. And we need to make sure that us as professionals are out there educating the public on what the difference is between the two. Another prediction, I started talking about this 2 years ago, and I'm predicting that starting this year, and actually Forbes already announced that many companies are starting to do this, but you're going to start to see two vendors in every customer. One is going to focus on IT, the other is going to focus on cybersecurity because they're very different focuses and very different metrics and very different personnels. So I see that starting to happen more and more. And I think that's going to be a continuing trend that we're going to start to see.
The dead giveaway is when you look at the C-suite of a large company like a Uber or Tesla or something like that. They don't have a guy. Well, we've got our IT guy. The C-suite will have two separate individuals. You got a chief information officer or chief technology officer, and then you've got a chief information security officer. Right, the guy who is the security officer who is in charge of the physical safety and well-being of the employees is not the same guy who's in charge of the security of the IT systems, right?
That's correct.
Those aren't the same guys, two different areas. And it's the same level of difference between the guy who's in charge of the technology and the guy who's in charge of securing the data and the technology. It's three vastly different positions.
They are. The large majority of the population see them as the same. And so every presentation I do with an organization, I start off with a presentation talking about the difference between the two so that when you're asking me questions, I will say, well, that's an IT question. Well, that's a cybersecurity question so that we can start to have the correct conversations in the room. I can't tell you how many RFPs I've seen in which they mix cybersecurity and IT. And they get responses that are all over the board and they wonder why. And they can't make a decision which vendors to select because they didn't understand the difference between the two. So that gets into a whole nother realm of when you're talking about how to bid out services. You've got to understand what you're bidding out before you price a bid. Don't mix an IT bid with a cybersecurity bid. They're not the same thing. If you combine the two, it's going to confuse things.
Yeah, and I've with my history, I've gone in multiple times to companies that have brought us in to do a third-party risk assessment for somebody, and they have existing IT, and it's hard to even get the IT guys sometimes to understand that, like, hey, we're not here for your job. We're here to make sure that you have a job next week, right? So, one thing that I have noticed over the last few years is that the IT side gets a lot easier to manage once those layers of cybersecurity discipline go into place, right? So, well, you mentioned earlier what'd you call it? About the traveler, the
impossible traveler.
The impossible traveler, right? Yeah. So we didn't have an impossible traveler, but we had an unexpected traveler, right? So person leaves, goes overseas, doesn't tell anybody that they're going overseas, also doesn't tell anybody that they're going to bring their laptop with them and log into their CRM while they're over there, and they got locked out, right? So then you've got, even with our company, with the multiple companies that I own, we do cybersecurity, risk management, and IT, and some level of combination with those different companies. But our IT help desk was like, hey, I need to get this fixed. I need to let this person in. She can't get in. And meanwhile, our SOC is saying, we have no information about this person being in Sweden, right? So, you've still got that interconnect. So we probably would have benefited from CybrHawk back then, because the AI would have told us that this person was traveling in the first place. But, there's a balancing act when you have a company with those two different divisions. We're providing it as a service, and there's also a balancing act when you're dealing with something like that at the C-suite level, where you've got the technology people have their budget, they want bigger, faster, stronger, and then you've got on the cybersecurity side where it's all that doesn't matter if a bad guy gets to it, right? So it doesn't matter how if you can get a brand new Ferrari, but if you leave the keys laying on the seat, you're not going to have a Ferrari anymore, right? So, having that balance in your budget, having that understanding of what these different roles are, and you wouldn't go to a podiatrist about a heart problem, you wouldn't go to a cardiologist about a foot problem, right? So, you want to make sure that you have partnerships with people that they can work with you in these different areas and make sure that you're covered, because it's an absolute hockey stick on the charts the way that cyber attacks have gone. And 60% of these attacks are on small businesses.
Yeah.
60% of these businesses are going under within 6 months of a breach. And as your business has scaled, so does your cyber attack. It'll scale right up to be as big as your business is and eat it whole. So I really appreciate your time today, Draython. This is the longest podcast we've done yet. I had fun talking to you.
I can keep going forever.
I know, and that's the problem. I think both of us are going to be able to go on forever with this, but we'll have to do another one when you come out with your next AI development.
What you can't see is my wife holding up signs in front of me.
She's got cue cards.
during research, and because don't forget, like there are a whole bunch of things they didn't say, talking about the CISA recommendations and all that sort of stuff, and she's holding this up and holding that up.
Perfect. Well, I'm surprised. My 3.5-year-old hasn't beat my door down. So we actually got through an hour-long recording without all that. All right, there she is. You're an excellent cue card holding. I never would have known.
I don't know which one to hold sometimes because
so luckily,
perfect.
Luckily, it's all in my head because I didn't get a chance to read all the stuff that was there that she was putting in front of me.
Perfect. Well, we'll do this again soon, and let us know when your next release for AI comes out. Anything left that you want to get off your chest before you jump off here?
I was talking to Jacob before this podcast, and I said, how much can I talk about the AI thing we're releasing is just, it's just phenomenal. It's absolutely out of this world.
Okay.
He wants us to hold off on publishing that yet until we want to make a big deal about it. So we believe it's going to, the second iteration of it, which is, it's like night and day from what we have in Avesa right now. I never mentioned Avesa.
So Draython, this has been awesome. This is the longest podcast I've done yet, just because I enjoy talking to you. But I can't let you go yet.
Okay.
I want you to talk about Avesa specifically, and what guys like me, as in the MSP business, can expect from this new technology.
I'm going to say something. Everyone's going to have to look it up. It's not like Sydney. So for those who don't know what Sydney is, look it up. It's another AI. Ours is not going to be that. So Avesa is our version of what we call our AI, and it actually transverses between the XDR and the NDR. And again, the XDR is the ability to look at any data from all your data islands and be able to look for threats inside those data islands. XDR has become a marketing term. And unfortunately, that's what's happening in the industry. True XDR really can look at all your data islands and look for threats. Now, that has to do with coming in and out of the organization. What about the lateral movement and the things that are going through the switches and between computers and things like that? That's where your NDR comes in for network detection and response. That's where Avesa combines the two and is able to have those intelligent conversations with XDR and NDR and be able to make decisions about what is a real threat and what is not. Avesa will then talk to the analyst using OpenAI to say, hey, I think this is a threat. Here's why. Can you check and confirm this is a threat or not? Now, again, the analyst would normally have done the same thing, but would have taken them 15, 20 minutes if they had seen it at all. Avesa will cut that time down to 60 seconds. So the analyst can spend more time looking at real threats instead of spending 15, 20 minutes on something and determining that it's not a threat. So Avesa really does reduce the stress on the tier one analysts.
So the analysts, the SOC, the on-site deployment tools, what does the deployment look like for Avesa from the MSP side?
It's just a deployment to the network. You can put it, we mirror a port so we can see the traffic, and we don't need to have access to it. We just need to mirror it so we can have visibility into it. And once that's fed into our SIM, all the magic happens there with Avesa. So there's a huge amount of data that goes through Avesa. So much that a human couldn't possibly identify it all, but an AI could. So by having that agent deployed on the network, both the network sensor and the XDR sensor, it gives you an unprecedented visibility into an environment so that threats become less likely to go unnoticed. And you can't stop what you can't see. So I talk to customers all the time and they go, well, we only want you to monitor our firewall. We don't want you to monitor our EDR and our Office 365. Well, okay, but what if there's an attack that comes through Office 365 that impacts the firewall because they were able to get to an account and get access to a computer? What happens if the reverse happens? Without having that full visibility, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. So you need that full visibility into all your data environments so that an AI like Avesa can identify those for you and make those correlations when you see things jump in between. Because adversaries nowadays are chopping from one location to another location. And if you don't have visibility to see that, like with Avesa, then you're really, really not fighting very effectively.
So what is your offering with Avesa that through CybrHawk? I know you have. Are you guys doing the whole SOC service and everything for the MSPs, or are you providing them the tools for? Are you providing the tools for SOCs? What do you?
Yes. So we every client we have is different. Some clients have their own SOC and they just use our software, but most MSPs will use our SOC to provide that both SIM, SOC, and NDR capability to their customers, so that they can really offer a full solution. And that's our goal, is to be able to give the MSP the ability to offer full security to their customers. Now, every MSP we work with is very different. Some are more advanced than others, just like customers. You have some that are just starting to look into it and others that are very advanced. And so we work with our customers based at whatever level they are located today and help them to continue to mature along that path so they can better protect their customers too. So it becomes a train the trainer sort of situation. And the visibility that we give to the MSP is the same visibility that we have. So we're not trying to do smokes and mirrors and say, hey, we'll take care of it and don't worry about it. You have the same access to the threat hunting dashboard that our analysts do. And if you want to see how we found a threat, we will walk you through your access to show you how we find it. That helps educate you at the same time as letting you see what a true XDR platform can do.
Oh, education and transparency from an IT security provider.
Doesn't happen.
I don't know. I don't know if I've seen that before. Well, this is awesome. We do have a few fans that are MSPs, so they'll appreciate the technical stuff here. But
it's not just for MSPs. We have, in some cases, customers that are more advanced want to see that dashboard also, and there are many competitors who don't allow customers to see that dashboard.
So, are you offering are you offering direct sales also? So companies can bring this in for IT, or do you require an MSP for management?
We require a technology partner. We do not sell direct to customers. But some of the MSP's customers or MSSP's customers require that they have access to the data too. And that's not possible with all of our competitors. We freely allow that to occur.
Yeah, that would be really helpful in a co-managed situation for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, if you are a small business owner, you need an MSP, an MSSP to help you apply all these cybersecurity measures. Protect yourself, protect your business, protect your family's legacy. Make sure that you're looking out for this sort of thing. If you're an MSP, CybrHawk and Avesa are going to be, I can tell already, it's going to blow up. So it's going to be really
cool. Marriage made in heaven.
And when your new tools come out, when you guys have new updates and stuff, definitely let us know because we'd love to have you back on the podcast. So, Draython, Really appreciate your time today,
Thank
sir.
you.